heater! I dare you to hit it!
He'll be sorry.
Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. The WBC is in full swing. Spring training is in full swing. Flax, it's hard to stop talking about baseball, as if we ever do that, to be fair. We got a good show for you guys today. This week in baseball is always a little bit of WBC and spring training action. We're going to revisit the Mason Miller trade with Leo Vries playing extremely well in spring training, and also a lot on Twitter just about whether or not that was a good trade to begin with, so we thought it'd be entertaining to talk a little bit on that. Going to teach you, for those of you who are not as familiar with the history of the WBC and Flax, a little bit more about the WBC history and some of the big moments that have happened over time. Junior Caminero, Flax, that guy's kind of good. We decided we'd talk a little bit about him today and how he may be the next true budding superstar in all of baseball. And finally, we will finish on the interesting interaction for Bryce Harper, I should say, comments about the WBC and Olympics. But Flax, we start where we always start. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. I got to go up and snowboard on a day that our baseball scrimmage was canceled because of snow. Everybody will be happy to know that we basically have no snow on the ground anymore. It snowed, Friday? It's Monday. Yeah. It's gone. That's kind of how Colorado works, which isn't too bad. It's like 70 degrees today.
Especially this year.
Yeah, well, we've gotten a lot less snow than we would like to get. But the mountain was solid up in Vail. Got some snowboarding in, which was nice. Weather was nice on Saturday, too. Got out and hiked. Lost an hour of sleep. That was tough. But I always like to say losing an hour's sleep is always worth gaining it in the afternoon and in the evening when I can start a tee time at 3 p.m. and get 18 holes in.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew that was going back to golf. If you didn't, welcome to the podcast. Decent weekend for me. Taylor and I were couch hunting this weekend, and we found 0 couches that we liked. So we're still couch hunting. That's where I'm at right now.
Get that. I know she's gonna listen to this and she's gonna agree with me. But you got to go get the really soft, big white one from Restoration Hardware.
You'll
look it
not
up.
Familiar.
You'll look it up and you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, that's a really nice looking couch. It costs a lot. Don't go buy it.
I figured.
There's some version of it out there that doesn't cost as much as they want you to pay.
That's how it works across the board, right? You can always find the Temu version of what you're looking for if you look hard enough.
That's right.
Flax, this week a lot happened in baseball. I'm going to go first here, letting people know about the WBC. It's been a lot of fun. If you have not had the opportunity to tune into WBC World Baseball Classic pool play, I highly recommend it. We are starting to move towards the quarterfinals here, Flax. Japan and Korea have locked up quarterfinal spots out of Pool C. The Dominican Republic and Venezuela have locked up quarterfinal spots out of Pool D. And as we record today, it's Monday, so we have some action that's going to happen today. Mexico versus the United States. Paul Skeens on the hill at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so let us know how that game went somewhere in the comments. The winner of this game will solidify their berth into the quarterfinals for Pool B. The teams still left in the mix in Pool B are 2-0 United States, 2-0 Mexico, and 2-0 Italy. By the time this is airing, the winner of Cuba and Puerto Rico will lock up a quarterfinals berth for Pool A. The catch in that pool right now is Puerto Rico and Cuba have been dominant enough that more than likely both of those teams by the end of Tuesday will have solidified quarterfinal spots. So a lot going on right now. Quick highlights for you guys within the WBC. The Dominican Republic team looks a lot like the 2013 team that we saw run the table. They're 3-0 with a 29 run differential, 9 home runs over a 3-game period. So watch out for them to continue. I'm just going to throw this one out there, hoping that USA-Mexico tonight was an excellent game. Paul Skeens on the mound for the first time on a WBC roster for the United States. And then my final call out here was For those of you who got to watch it, Pool C, which is the toughest timing for all of us to watch due to it being in Tokyo, was really, really solid this year. Australia and Taiwan would end up both going 2-2 and really putting the screws to Korea and Japan to give an opportunity for both of them. Neither will make the quarterfinals this year, but it sounds like Pool C is going to be a lot of fun for years to come. So there's your quick WBC update. Flax, what happened in spring training?
Spring training has been a little bit less the focus the last week or so, with a lot of big-time players, a lot of big-time prospects being in the WBC. But it's been fun to see some younger guys get an opportunity, some pitchers that are working on stuff, have some lineups that they can kind of go dominate and be successful against. Vance Honeycutt, one I want to highlight, 4th straight at bat with a home run, and then a single following it the next day. So he's 5 for 5 with 5 singles, with 5 hits, 4 of them being home runs. The thing I like the most about it is that he's not on the spring training roster. He will not make the team out of camp. He's just been getting some extra at-bats because he's been in Florida. He's a good body to have. They want to test him, but he's not there yet. He was their 2024 first-round draft pick. He struggled a little bit last season, made some big adjustments this offseason to get back to what I think is closer to his college stance, swing. It's been working, but it's fun to see when stuff like that happens. For the Pirates, they have a really good shortstop, 21 years old. He's hitting .556 with 3 home runs in spring training, and his name is not Connor Griffin. It's Yordany De Los Santos. The dude really sees the ball well at the plate, really good quality of contact. He'll probably be a hitting prospect that you'll see a lot of as the season goes on if you pay attention to that stuff. It's just one of those things where he's getting his opportunity this spring training. He's making the most of it, and he's going to force his way into the conversation over the next couple of years with somebody really top tier in front of him. Kyle Harrison, one of those pitchers who's working on stuff, trying to get a rotation spot with the Brewers, moved there from the Red Sox after being traded from the Giants with the Caleb Durbin trade this offseason. So Kyle Harrison been working on a changeup with the Brewers pitching staff. 3 innings pitched, 8 Ks so far this spring training. Swing and miss was not something he was incredible at. Starting to see a lot more of it already in spring training. I'd like to see how this progresses over the next couple of weeks and see if he can earn a rotation spot in Milwaukee. And then Hunter Brown, can't not mention him. He will be the ace of the Astros staff, and he's doing ace things in spring training. He's got 8 2/3 innings pitched with 14 Ks and a .69 whip. Guys aren't hitting the ball much off him. A lot of swing and miss. So spring training, there's a couple highlights right there. I'm sure in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as guys start making their way back from the WBC, it'll start to ramp up a whole lot more.
Yeah, Hunter Brown's a fun one too, because if you put a Hunter Brown pitch side by side with a Justin Verlander pitch, there is a ton of similarities. I'm not sure if you've done that one for yourself yet, Flax, but if you haven't, wait till you see it. It's pretty funny, and guess what? He's starting to look like he might be a JV type guy here sooner than later for the Astros long term. Let's move here right into topic number 1, Flax. Revisiting last year's largest trade, or most notable trade at the deadline, which was Mason Miller moving from the Athletics to the San Diego Padres. AJ Preller was straight on one last trade deadline.
Yeah.
No care in the world for prospects, and I kind of loved it, to be honest, because when you're in a window to win, you got to be willing to move on who you can move on, and I think it really did show that Preller believes in his ability to refill the pipeline quickly. But where I start this conversation, Flax, is there was just a lot of random talk over the last couple of months in the offseason of some people believing that the A's have absolutely fleeced the Padres. Others trying to understand why with 4 full years of control, you would ever move an arm as quality as Mason Miller, especially one who, when he came up, was throwing innings as a starter, not a back-end bullpen arm. So I thought this would be a fun conversation. And here's how I want to kind of set our scene here real quick. For those of you who are a little bit newer to everything that we do here, Mason Miller is arguably one of the top 10 arms across baseball. He is arguably the number one arm out of a bullpen. He possesses the hardest or most consistently hard fastball in all of baseball, topping out at 104 on a regular basis. So you can imagine at 27 with 4 years of control, why people might question you moving a talent like that. The Padres would also receive starter J.P. Sears. Sears is a guy who's going to be fighting for a spot in spring training for them this year as probably a swingman. He has a 7-pitch mix, and has been around the league for the last 3 to 4 years, bouncing around and really eating up innings at the back end of rotations. That is what the Padres received in this trade. They gave up, at the time, the number 3 overall prospect by MLB.com in all of baseball, Leo Vries. They also received 3 other pitching prospects from the San Diego Padres. All 3 of them were right-handed starting pitchers. Again, starting pitchers. I think that's a really important note to be made here. All 3 of those guys are ranked within the top 22 of the Athletics top 30 prospects by MLB.com in 2026. We're going to go into each of those guys a little bit as we move on. But Flax, let's start the discussion holistically. What did you think of this trade at the time, and have you had any feelings that have changed since?
I feel like I was a little desensitized to the announcement when it happened because they've been talking about moving Mason Miller for the last 2 years, right? Back in 2024, it was the conversation at the deadline, and everybody said, well, he's got 5 more years of control. Why would you move him so quickly? Obviously, it's a closer. Are you going to get that much for him? Then it became, if you can get the right deal for him, absolutely you move him, right? At the time, I believe they still had, I think they had Lucas Erceg still in their bullpen at the time as well before they moved him to the Royals. And they've had a couple other really hard-throwing arms that existed already in that bullpen. So everybody's thought in 2024 was, if you want to move the guy, move the guy. Like, you're not... you're only competing to the extent of trying to continue to get better. Obviously, in 4 or 5 years, you want to have the premier closer in the league. But here's the real deal. You want to go get him back in 2 years, 3 years, when you're competing at the deadline and the Padres maybe aren't? Go trade back for him. He might be there. He also might not be Mason Miller by then. And then I think when you look at what the A's got for it, this is what everyone's been talking about they needed to take the next step on, right? It was, can you get arms that allow your young core of bats, which they've now locked up and we've talked extensively about, can you support them with games where they're not playing from behind by 3 or 4 runs every day? Can you get them 4 to 5 good arms that every 5 days can go out and keep you in a ball game for 5 to 6 innings? And they tried to go to the free agent market last year, get Luis Severino. It's a hard thing to do playing where they're playing in Sacramento right now. The likelihood is it'll be hard the first couple of years in Vegas, even though it's Vegas, because pitchers are going to want to see how the ball plays there. Once that is all settled and we get a better understanding, what you have to do between now and then is fill that gap with guys that you can potentially develop. Getting 3 new arms that could be starters, but likelihood is 1 to 2 of them end up being high leverage relievers, not a bad thing. And you pair that with all the guys that have already existed in your pipeline as starting pitchers. This was my first reaction was A's won this trade by a million miles, and we're now 5-6 months gone from it. I think I still feel the same way. I think I still feel like the A's won this trade, no questions asked. J.P. Sears is fine. He's an innings eater. I don't really think that's moving the needle for them, especially when you're getting a guy like Musgrove back. You have Michael King. You have Nick Pivetta. Like, you have arms that are going to do the job for you. Adding a swingman and a high leverage bullpen arm, like, I don't know. You could have just paid Robert Suarez this offseason.
Well, and to be fair to the Padres, for what it's worth, I think that the shift in that statement with J.P. Sears happens from the fact that at the time, bringing in J.P. Sears was something they needed, right? It was a short-term need. But this goes back to what we always talk about, unfortunately, with large trades like this. Regardless of how much control you got out of Mason Miller, J.P. Sears was a piece that was meant to help you win last year. And unfortunately, you didn't win last year in this scenario. So it does, over time, devalue the piece that you got back when guys like Musgrove and King were hurt, and you had to have a guy like JP Sears throw out some okay innings for you and allow your offense to hopefully eat. You know, I really look at this, Flax, and some days I sound like a broken record, I'm sure, with this, but I think what I like the most about this from an A's perspective is the recognition and understanding of where they were in a development process and where they were after the draft and what they had. At first, you look at the loss of Mason Miller, especially in a team that looks like they're starting to compete. They look like they could be a playoff team in 2026, even in a ballpark that is not going to help them. So you would say initially, okay, Mason Miller would be a huge add to the back end of my bullpen. However, what the A's are really looking at is the long-term focus and how they expand this overarching window. They traded out of, once again, and we talk about what good GMs do, they traded out a surplus. Right now, of the A's top 30 against what MLB.com believes is their top 30, they have 11 total arms that have played either at AA or higher, and the only arm that was an exception in that statement from me was their number 1 overall pick in Jamie Arnold, who everybody believes is a guy who could be fast-tracked to the highest level of baseball due to what he did at Florida State, what his arsenal is, and where his arm angle is currently coming from a deception perspective, out of the left side. 11 guys, Flax. So one of the things people have to recognize and realize is majority of these guys are starters. Majority of them will not be starters at the highest level. But the versatility that this brings an organization is absolutely massive across the board. So I love that this group with the Athletics saw what they had and said, at the end of the day, are we replacing Mason Miller 1 for 1? No. But if we add 3 additional arms and one of those guys gets anywhere in the same stratosphere, plus we bring in one of the better, if not best, young international prospects that we've seen in a very long time in Leo Vries in combo with those arms, how can you say no? And it hits the mark that we talked about. You traded out a surplus and you got a king's ransom. There was no reason not to say yes to this move for that entire group. Yeah, so I love what they did.
And I like the work that David Frost, their GM, has done, since 2015. And if you really want to go back that far, you're talking about a guy who is navigating stuff that is out of his control with ownership, right? They hire people not above him from a baseball operations perspective, but from an operations perspective, focusing more on the choice to move this team to Las Vegas, while he is trying to manage the expectations that come with the players that already exist, the future potential players to add to this roster, and how you get guys to stick around for the long haul. Being able to manage the expectations of the younger players, create an atmosphere that makes guys want to stick around, I think is also really important to think about when making a trade like this. It's hard for a GM to give up such a good piece, but when he knows that he's already had success starting to build the core, he feels comfortable taking in young talent that he thinks he can also engage in that same pathway, that same process, right? To look around and say, hey, I got all of you guys because I think this is actually a better way to build a ball club. To take the youngest talent I can, make you guys truly believe in what we're doing here, stick around for the long haul, and make it beneficial to you and me. And I think that's the story he's telling right now. And it's done a really good job of kind of compartmentalizing from the organization and their shift and their move to the team on the field and how they actually get out and play the game every day. And again, we talk about the Athletics all the time, not because we're fans of the team, but because we're fans of the way that they're building their process and the players that they have. And I think we could say some very similar things, and we have, about other teams in baseball. We've talked about the White Sox. We've talked about the Marlins. We've talked about the Rays. Again, they're all teams that, if you go back 10 years, made a concerted effort to try and shift the way that they think, right? And then in doing so, got to the point of finding the right person in the front office who can make the necessary decisions to do that. And I think this is also where you flip around and you look at a guy like AJ Preller on the other side and say, he's in a very precarious situation with the front office. That team's talked about selling. They had an owner that died. They had issues with who that team then moved its way onto. Dealing with all of that while getting people to sign contracts, but also being able to move players and have guys join the team, work within financial constraints while having larger contracts than you probably want at this point, while still competing in what has become one of the toughest divisions in baseball year in and year out. We can't say enough about it, while also being the kind of person who can get in front of a microphone and tamper expectations and still be so well liked by his fan base.
Yeah.
And not that these guys are in it to be liked, they're in it to win a World Series, but to be able to do both is a nice combination. Not every GM can get in front of a microphone and say the right answers and make people feel like it's part of progress, not a part of a backward step.
I completely agree. I think when you actually flop to the Padres side of the trade, though I believe the A's probably win this by a landslide, because Leo Vries, who we have not spent a ton of specific time on him, for those of you who don't know, he's currently the number 4 prospect by MLB.com in all of baseball, the number 1 A's prospect. This is a big-bodied 19-year-old shortstop who is a switch hitter. He's athletic enough to stay at short. The dude absolutely rakes across across A to AA in 2025. He slugged 15 home runs, 28 doubles, and 8 triples. The dude is a talent that we could soon be considering generational. At the same time, to Preller's credit, which we don't always want to give, in a division like the NL West, your ability to close down games is one of the most important things you can do. And the flip side here is right now, the back end of that bullpen in San Diego, Adrian Morhone, Jeremiah Estrada, and Mason Miller, you just got to get to the 7th with the lead in most cases. So to the credit of what Preller and group are doing, there's a recognition that closing out games is one of the most important things you do. The tougher part here, and I think this is where the knock is like you always like to say, Flax, your closer is closer to a middle reliever than he is Mariano Rivera, even when his name is Mason Miller, no matter who that person is on a regular basis. So it's tough because when you have a guy who throws 104, is he going to have the longevity of Aroldis Chapman? Or is that just not the case? Because welcome to what that does on your arm. So I think there's a lot more to unpack here. We talked about this maybe being a little bit quick to go back and evaluate the trade, but there was a lot of talk on socials about Vries and Mason Miller this week. So it felt like it would be fun to bring up. Flax, my final note here on this topic is that Henry Baez, he was one of the 3 pitchers that the A's got from San Diego. He's their number 14th overall pick. This guy is a pick-to-click guy for me, and I want to bring a little bit of light to him for those who are not familiar. Baez did have a forearm injury, and he only had 3 starts with the A's when he came over due to this forearm injury. He's healthy and ready to go for 2026. This is a guy who has a turbo-type sinker sitting 93 to 95 and is topped 99 with great arm side run and sink. He has a wipeout slider in the low 80s. It's very interesting because this pitch actually started out as a curveball and has slowly developed into more of a slider over the years. He combos that with an 86-mile-an-hour changeup. But what this kid was doing when he was with San Diego, he had the lowest whip on that side of the league in AA. He's got a 1.44 ground ball to air ball rate, which what that's showing us is that sinker is as deadly as we think it is and keeping the ball on the ground consistently. And 109 innings pitched at the AA level last year, he threw to a 2.39 ERA, a 105 whip, 100 Ks, 35 walks, and a 203 batting average against. Little shout out for Henry Baez. I think this dude picked to click. That's what I got for you.
I like that. I mean, listen, there's so much to like about what Frost and team added here with a lot of these guys. I think I probably lean towards Baez as the most likely long-term starting pitching addition across these three. And it's more just because of the mix than anything. I think it's one of those mixes where you got multiple pitches going both directions. They bridge themselves well. If the sinker can play as a primary pitch as well as it has up to this point, being a guy where no matter the ballpark that they play in, he's going to keep the ball on the ground at a high rate. Those are all things that are super successful, because you know what we say about hitters. They don't get paid to put the ball on the ground. So if pitchers can make it happen consistently, they're going to do a pretty dang good job. So I like him as far as those three guys go to kind of be the potential future arm from a starting pitcher perspective. I like the other two out of the bullpen just as well. I think Net, has high-end stuff, has definitely shown metal being a starter, but I think long-term, if you see this guy become a really solid swingman and a consistent middle relief arm, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I think Net and Nunez both have actual high leverage stuff when you put them in a bullpen. The question is, what the question always is with your bullpen arms is, can we attack the zone enough and can we not beat ourselves? So it'll be really fun to watch. That's the conversation with Edwernell Nunez. Dude boasts a 97 to 99 mile an hour fastball that tops at 101 with a wipeout slider as a plus offering. So again, you're going to see him in their bullpen this year too, by the way. So expect of all these arms we've talked about to at least get to see Nunez. You might see Net later on in the year. You might see Baez later on in the year as well.
Real quick, before we jump into the next topic,
please.
Some breaking news from Jeff Passan and Robert Murray. Jesus Luzardo signs a 5-year extension with the Philadelphia Phillies. 5-year extension, totaling up to, it looks like, $146 million when it's all said and done, with potential escalators, potential growth in team option on the back end. So not that that's a necessary topic for us to totally cover, but just a quick note on Jesus Luzardo for everyone to understand how much they have actually done to improve who he is as a pitcher. This man did not throw a sweeper ever coming into 2025. In 2025, after the Phillies had helped him develop a sweeper, it generated a 43.7% whiff rate on 933 pitches, which is a ridiculous swing and miss rate on a pitch that you have never thrown competitively at the highest level ever. So he obviously felt that his best potential place for growth was with the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Phillies were happy to put a number to that made him sign.
It's great timing too, because there were, and I understand exactly why, being a Nationals fan, watching all of my guys play for the Phillies now. It's a really good note here. I think Phillies fans were a little disappointed when Ranger Suarez wasn't brought back. He had been around the organization for a very long time. However, Ranger Suarez's deal flax, 5 years, $130 million with some escalators. So for everybody wondering where the Phillies would spend that money instead, you just found it on Jesus Luzardo, also coming from the left side.
And flipping this around full circle to the topic that we just had, Jesus Luzardo made 9 total starts across 18 total games with, at the time, the Oakland Athletics in 2019 and 2020. So that was not the arm they wanted to hold on to. Clearly, he was a very different arm at the time. But, Jesus Luzardo signed an extension.
Yeah, and just because Nationals love to sign with the Phillies, he was a National. He was also first. A National. We traded him to the A's for Gio Gonzalez, just for more tidbits of fun this week. Good for you guys to know. Flax, great breaking news. We love it on the pod. I think the one thing we had last year was the Paul Goldschmidt signing. This is a pretty good one, so nice job on your part. This feels
slightly better.
Slightly larger here in this scenario.
Yeah.
Flax, I wanted to take you through, because we had talked about the fact that the WBC had not been something you had paid a ton of attention to just in the past, not in a negative way. It just wasn't on your radar the same way it has been on mine for a while. And we thought, for you and other viewers who aren't familiar with the WBC, I would give a relatively brief rundown of the WBC past and what happened in the first 5 WBCs We'll notate that in 2020, the WBC was obviously canceled due to COVID. Surprise, surprise. But Flax, I want to take you back to a time when you were 11 years old. And so was I, it turns out.
Fun.
2006, the first ever World Baseball Classic. There was a guy who came from Japan who was showcased to the world for the first time ever. You might know him as Daisuke Matsuzaka. This was the first time the world got to see what Daisuke could do in 2006. He would showcase his gyro ball for Team Japan, and Team Japan would simply not disappoint. Matsuzaka would go 3-0 in the 2006 World Baseball Classic. He would win the tournament MVP, and Japan would defeat Cuba to win the 2006 inaugural WBC 10-6. And that's where we start, because Japan, Flax, was a powerhouse for the first 2 years of this tournament, no question. But I want you to guess in 2006 some names that might have been on the United States team. Since that's where we're based, they're obviously going to get their own cameo. There was quite a few names on that team and pretty high expectations in 2006.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, Derek Jeter, Roger Clemens,
Yep.
Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., and Chipper Jones, to name a few.
Did they get heralded as the dream team, very similar to Michael Jordan's dream team at the time?
Of course.
Okay.
It was 2006. In fact, as you already know.
I actually don't know how those timetables overlap.
No. But I'm telling you, if you
Or at
remember the early 2000s, which, hey, we're 11, so maybe you don't. Every team that came after Michael Jordan's dream team was the next dream team.
That makes sense.
So it was no different here. The United States team in 2006 would not get out of the quarterfinals, regardless of the talent that was on that roster. Moving to 2009, Flax, Daisuke would simply come back and Daisuke everybody up. No questions asked. This time, not only would he go 3-0 for the Japanese team and help them win their second WBC, he had a 2.45 ERA throughout the tournament. Japan would go on to defeat South Korea in an extra innings game, 5-3, where Ichiro Suzuki himself had 4 hits in the championship game and a 2-run single in the 10th to help seal the victory for Japan. I see a question.
Yeah, well, not a question. I was just more of a statement that it feels like the theme here from a Japan perspective is that, like, there's always somebody on Japan's team that maybe not everybody knows about, but also shows up and absolutely dominates, and everybody's like, that guy's not playing in the MLB. Like, we have this perception, right? Like, first it was Dice, and Ichiro obviously was Ichiro. Sure. He did what you'd expect him to do, but to me that's kind of like Ohtani showing up in game 1 and hitting a grand slam. Like, he did what you expected him to do. He showed up in the moment.
Well, for what it's worth, Kazuma Akamoto homered in a big semifinal game in the 2023 WBC.
There you go.
Munetaka Murakami was not playing well in the last WBC and then homered just at the right time down in Miami for the Japanese team. So
that's what happens to super teams.
You are very on point with your thought process here. But 2009 is a fun one, and I'm going to tell you why. Because a long, long time ago in a land far, far away, Kenley Jansen was a catcher.
Yes, he was.
That's something that I think you actually know.
That one I did know.
Yes. And Kenley Jansen, when he was a catcher in 2009, was the starting catcher for Team Netherlands. And many people do not know that about him. Not only was he the starting catcher for Team Netherlands, but Flax, Kenley Jansen was a dog behind the dish. There is multiple videos you can look up of Kenley just hosing people across
I was going to say,
the
he had an
diamond in this
absolute
WBC.
cannon behind the plate, obviously. I mean, not shocking.
He would go on to throw out the likes of Willie Tavares and Ryan Braun throughout the tournament. If you go and look at the throw out at second base he had of Ryan Braun, from his knees, absolute cannon on the money. So just a little note here for all the people. Go watch it, because see Kenley in catcher's gear, wild.
He also looks like a baby. He just looks like a child. When he takes the mask off after that one throwdown, he looks like a child. It's so wild to see.
I love it. And this is one of the great things, right? One of the things that the WBC has brought to us is the opportunity for young prospects across the board to be shown before you know who they were. One of the big ones that we covered, or two of the big ones that we covered in 2023, or I guess we didn't cover, but got covered in 2023, were guys like Spencer Horwitz, who is now actually full-on leading off for Team Israel. Edouard Julien hit a couple home runs for Team Canada in the 2023 WBC. Harry Ford was already the starting catcher for Team Great Britain at the time. So a lot of fun when it comes to these younger guys getting opportunities, and then you get to hear their name further down the road. Flax, moving to 2013 here. In the 2013 WBC.
That was real quick, that was the year we graduated high school.
Thanks for that. Appreciate.
Sure. So everybody knows our age. You can do the math.
The 2013 WBC was the first time we had a changing of the guard at the top of the WBC. And the 2013 Dominican Republic team absolutely ravaged the competition, to say the least. They are the first team in WBC history to go undefeated throughout the entirety of the tournament. That has now changed, and we'll hit that when we get to 2023. The MVP of that tournament, Flax, the one and only Robinson Cano, who would hit .469 and 4 home runs for the tournament and was on another planet. Nelson Cruz had a huge late-hitting home run in the quarterfinals to help push the DR past the United States. Puerto Rico played stopper to Japan for the first time ever, allowing the Puerto Rican team to get a shot at the Dominican Republic in the championship game, which unfortunately they would lose. The DR would win 3-0 and defeat Puerto Rico in the championship game.
So just to add some context, some 2013 context for those two guys, Robinson Cano had potentially one of his better offensive years, I would say. Had 107 RBIs / 314, 383, 516, finished 5th in the MVP voting, Silver Slugger, All-Star that year with 27 home runs. Nelson Cruz, the year prior to him getting to Baltimore, so his last year in Texas, had 110 hits, 27 home runs. I actually think this was where maybe we saw Nelson Cruz take the next step forward in his progression as a hitter. Because after 2014, he went on an unbelievable run. So he was an all-star for only the second time in his first, looks like 8-9 years in the league at 32 in 2013. 2014 to 2021, the man was absolutely dialed. And I think that that's indicative of what the WBC brings to everybody, but especially the DR. Like, these guys just resort to, like, playing ball with their boys and bringing the emotion to the table. And, like, I honestly think it brought Nelson Cruz back into, like, I'm just going to go hit baseballs.
I don't disagree.
There's your context to 2013.
Look, we've seen the energy, and you're seeing that this year, especially, as always, from the DR team. Flax, 2017 would be the first year that the United States would finally get over the hump with a very talented team. In the championship game, they would beat Puerto Rico 8-0. Puerto Rico making it to the championship in back-to-back WBCs and unfortunately unable to convert. This series, or should say, this World Baseball Classic had a lot of really iconic overarching moments, 2 specific plays that have been seared into the brains of baseball fans, especially if you just look up WBC. Both of these plays tend to come up. First and foremost was Adam Jones in center field in San Diego going full Superman with his body clearing half of the fence to rob Manny Machado of a home run in the bottom of the 7th inning in the 2017 WBC quarterfinals. Manny obviously playing for the Dominican Republic team. The United States had faced a tough loss against them in the previous subset. So this was a huge overall moment. Marcus Stroman would be the tournament MVP. He would pull off his own impersonation of Daisuke Matsuzaka, going 3-0 with a 2.45 ERA, and he threw 6 shutout innings in the championship game. I think it was one of the best overall starts Marcus Stroman has probably just ever had throughout his career, and to do it wearing the United States uniform is freaking amazing. I'm sure he would agree if you asked him.
Probably one of the more memorable for himself. No doubt.
I would hope.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be memorable for me, too. I'd love to wear the colors. So, at the end of the day, Flax, the other moment from 2017 you and everybody probably know was the famous Javier Baez El Mago tag at second base that went viral. Yachty throws out a guy from behind the plate, and Javier Baez is pointing at him and celebrating while the ball is about 60% of the way to him. Catches the ball and no-look tags the guy at second base. This was a moment that we've seen played all over the place on a regular basis. You can find it pretty easily. So 2 huge moments in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one. That Adam Jones catch, obviously, you've seen it everywhere. It's Adam Jones, Manny Machado. I'm an Orioles fan. I think between that and the way that 2023 ended are probably the 2 times that I was most engaged with the World Baseball Classic as a whole.
Yeah, and understandably. And I think that the thought process here is as more players are eligible to play and can play, we can generate more moments like this in what should be our sports World Cup at the end of the day. 2020, COVID canceled our WBC. Moving on to 2023, this is the quickest hitter of all of them since most of you are probably familiar, but if you're not, the United States and Japan would have an epic battle in the championship game. Japan would defeat the United States 3-2. We got literally everything we could have possibly asked for to end the WBC. Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, 1 swing wins it all, 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th.
Golden at bat.
I mean, it was everything and more that any of us could have asked for that moment to be. A couple notes from that World Baseball Classic. 1, Ohtani very obviously ended up winning MVP. Not really surprised there. Japan, the second team ever to run the table throughout a WBC. And the only note I have from prior to this game was Trey Turner had, in my opinion, one of the best United States moments ever in a WBC, which was down in the 8th inning to Venezuela. Trey Turner hits a grand slam to put the United States in front. One of the most memorable home run trots for somebody in the U.S. who watches and loves watching the colors on the field and the players who get to play for our country.
Yeah, I think the only way to really wrap up this topic that would make the most sense is to kind of break down just slightly, again, for people, what this is looking like for potential quarterfinals, who would play against, what pools play against who, and just for people's edification, Pool A will play Pool B. Pool C will play Pool D. You have two teams from each pool of the 4 that make it. So you get 8 teams total that go to the quarterfinal, as it always happens. And the breakdown of that is, 1 on A plays 2 on B, and 1 on B plays 2 on A, and same thing for the C and D side. And then the beauty of that being that the winner of one of the C and D sides will play the winner of one of the A and B sides, and same thing on the other. So you won't end up with these, 2 sides being completely separated the whole time. There's a little bit of mixing and matching. Until we know how those quarterfinals break out, we really won't know what things are going to look like in Houston and Miami, where the 2 quarterfinal sites are going to be held in the U.S. But all that said, by March 17th, this will all be over. So it's going to happen quick. You got to pay attention. I think tonight's test for the U.S. is probably going to be one of the toughest they're going to go up against, just because of their record against Mexico in the past. I think all the expectation in the world is on this team and this roster. But this is the beauty of international baseball is that not only do we see teams go away from the traditional style of, bomb and gouge as we use in golf, right? Hit the ball as far as you can, and who cares when you swing and miss. It's kind of the offensive strategy that you've seen a lot of MLB teams take. These international teams don't play that way. They're playing for runs. They're playing to get guys across the plate. They don't need home runs to do it. And these are pitchers that these guys have never seen. This is the struggle with being so technologically advanced. These are pitchers that these guys have no information on. And when you go from being a hitter who's so good at leveraging the information you're given, and you kind of have to fly blind and just see the ball and hit the ball, it makes it a whole lot harder to be a good hitter. Now, some of them already just kind of see the ball and hit the ball. Some of them take the attitude of, I'm going to get a fastball to hit and I'm going to go hit the first one I get. But the likelihood is that you may not get one if you're one of the U.S. players, and you got to work around that. Not everybody's throwing 98. Some of the guys are throwing 89, and you got to work on that too, right? So you see teams like Mexico will throw a guy for 3 innings, they'll move on to the next guy, move on to the next guy. They're not going to let these U.S. hitters see their pitchers 2-3 times over.
Yeah. Look, very different game at the end of the day. I think it's played more like the game that we all grew up playing. For context, Luis Ariz, I believe, career in the WBC has a 0% whiff rate against fastball, but a 45% whiff rate against everything else. So, yeah, he's hunting fastball. Like, it's just very obvious what the plan is for a guy like that in this scenario. Flax, no Jackson's bullpen today, which means neither of us are going to get smarter today. That's okay.
Shame.
We promise we'll get smarter next week. We'll do our best. But let's move on to a guy that you've really enjoyed getting to talk about. You've really enjoyed getting to watch play the game of baseball. Yeah. And that's Junior Caminero. He looks like he might be the next budding superstar in our game. This is a guy who at the end of the day stormed onto the scene last year for many people. We saw what he did in Lindome and the Venezuelan Winter League, which was absolutely Venezuelan Winter League? Yeah.
Dominican
Winter League, my bad. And what he did last year, comes onto the scene, hits 45 home runs as a rookie, 28 doubles. The pop in this dude's bat is wild. His bat speed is at the top of the charts, and he generally is good at making contact with that elite bat speed. What do you think of this guy, man? I mean, this is something impressive.
He does things to the baseball that are unnatural. We've seen 2 home runs from him in the World Baseball Classic that both trajectory off the bat and exit velocity don't generally create home runs, right? They're generally doubles in the gap, and he creates so much backspin. It is absolutely insane. But one of the things to look out for that I think is going to only improve for him as the next couple of years go on, this is a guy who hovers around a 20%, 20 to 22% K rate at the big league level, across a lot more plate appearances at the minor league level, hovered around an 18%. I think as pitching gets tougher, his ability to swing and miss gets a little bit higher. But because of his bat speed, he gets more success on mistakes. That's really important to understand. This is where bat speed really comes in. A guy like Luis Ariz can have a lot of consistent barrel contact. One of the best guys in barrel swings. But not getting a lot of power, not a ton of bat speed, but he's also not swinging and missing a lot. When he makes a mistake and doesn't hit a barrel, it is almost guaranteed to be an out. When Junior Caminero makes contact, his margin for error is so much wider, which is why we like the expectation of success with him. A great example would be his home and away stats last year. Very odd split between home and away. We're talking about a guy that WRC plus wise was 20 points, was 60 points worse on the road. And a lot of people will look at it and say, really small ballpark at home, really easy to hit at home. But you know what he did well no matter where he went? He hit balls out of the ballpark and he hit balls into the gap. And I don't think people realize he had a 260 ISO on the road. Like a 150 is MLB average. It was almost 100 points higher than MLB average on just straight power. So you start looking at what else maybe went a little bit wrong on the road. He struck out a little bit more, but he walked around the same. It really was just that he wasn't hitting as many singles. But when he did make contact, he was hitting the ball hard and he was hitting the ball out of the ballpark just the same. And it turned into results, right? We're talking about a guy that between home and away, 22 home runs at home, actually had 23 on the road, hit 45 last year. It's ridiculous. 17 doubles at home, 11 on the road. He's driving in the same amount of runs on the road as he is at home. I don't really care as much about the splits as far as getting on base, hitting for average, when he's still providing a really solid amount of value in the lineup. And I think that it's going to continue translating, and you'll see those road stats start to creep up. And you'll probably see the home stats find level water at the Trop, and he'll be a more consistent hitter across 162.
So I want to, just because it's entertaining and the time is great, you made the comment there that what he does is not real because he has a wider margin to miss, almost, right? That's because he's got an unbelievable bat speed that he retains and can make contact with. When we look at batted ball metrics, what supports everything that you're saying is awesome here. He has a 92 percentile hard hit rate of 51.4%. The two things I look at in quality of contact for normal hitters, for normal human beings who play at the major league level, are your LA sweet spot, which is whether or not you are getting the right result at the right angle. Okay?
Okay.
Second percentile in all of baseball. His squared up percentage, which squared up percentage is how often are you getting the most out of your swing speed, the swing speed, exit velocity, and everything going in the field. He's a 20 percentile guy. So what this tells you is exactly what you said. As long as Junior Caminero is putting the ball in play, his freakish bat speed and hand-eye coordination, regardless of where the ball hits the bat, is going to generate and result in something outstanding. And when he does hit the barrel, it's a double or a home run. What else can you say? The other thing that Junior Caminero has going for him is when you look at his spray chart, it's one of the prettiest spray charts in all of baseball for a power hitter. This guy uses every portion of the field. Does. Right? There is no question that this is a guy who's coming from the school of, I'm going to hit the ball really hard up the middle of the field. If I pull it, if it goes the other way, that's just the result that happened. It's not something I'm trying to generate. And with a guy like this who gets the ball in the air enough, that's exactly what you want. Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera, all these big-name guys that everyone knows, they'll all tell you they're trying to hit a line drive right above the pitcher's head. That's
Aaron
what you're
Judge
looking
says
for.
it.
That's
Ken
the
Griffey
result.
Jr. always said it.
Absolutely. So you've got this guy who I think has all the pieces and all the tools with a freakish ability to swing the baseball bat harder than everybody without trying.
Yeah.
The other thing, Flax, that I want to note on him before we move on is you are already seeing the right types of improvements, in my opinion, over small sample sizes, again, throughout his career hitting at the big league level. We have watched his chase rate, his whiff rate, his walk rate all improve. That's telling me that he's seeing the ball better. He's making better decisions when it comes to letting it go and swinging the bat. And his K rate has slowly started to crawl down closer to that number of 18% that we saw from him at the minor league levels. This is showing that Caminero is simply adjusting to Major League Baseball exactly how you'd like. The one caveat I put and end this topic on for us is simple. Major League Baseball now has a full year of video on you, Junior. It's time to step up because they will try to find some hole and they will try to exploit it. So though I expect Junior Caminero to probably hit 40 home runs again here in 2026, I think we're going to learn a lot about him from a resilience perspective because the adjustments are going to be made on the hill. Let's see what he does.
I like it. I think that's a good place to move on.
Heck yeah. Last topic of the day. You guys get an extra one because Jackson's bullpen is unavailable at the current moment. And Flax, that was Bryce Harper just had some comments about the Olympics and the WBC that kind of went viral this week. I think we wanted to play this clip for everybody, but we wanted to play it with the question that was asked. I think that we fall into this loop as a group in society where like we just hear the answer and then we make our opinion completely off the answer. So here's Bryce Harper and Flax. You have the name of the reporter. I'd like you to say his name.
Yeah, Jeff Skversky.
Jeff Skversky. Here is their interaction at a media press conference. I believe it was after Game 1 for the United States.
Given the excitement over the hockey team in the Olympics, would you guys like to see baseball back in the Olympics? It's been a while.
Yeah, I've been fighting for LA 28 for a long time. I think my whole career I've been trying to get something started or something coming up. Obviously the WBC has been great, but it's not the Olympics, right? That's no disrespect to WBC or anything, but everybody knows that when the Olympics are on, everybody's watching. Don't matter what sport it is, it could be the most random sport, and it's got all the fans watching it. So I'm hoping LA 28 happens. I'm hoping the next CBA agreement something can happen where teams and players can come to an agreement on taking that 2-week break, especially it being in our home country. It'd be great for baseball. You talk about growing the game, and being able to grow it at the highest level would help out tremendously.
All right, Flax, you and I have heard that snippet about 1,300 times since it got made. I want to start with you because I think you had some really good thoughts on this, and then I'll dive into my thoughts. But where are you with the question, the comment, and everything that got said from Bryce?
First thought was weird time to say what he said. And then as we were talking about it, it hit me that I didn't know what question he was asked and how prompted the answer was. So I went back, listened to the question, which you guys heard, which was basically, U.S. men's hockey team wins at the Olympics, U.S. hockey teams win at the Olympics. Doesn't make you excited for the Olympics. And his response, I think what he was trying to say, again, I'll caveat it with, he said it poorly. I think what he was trying to say was, if Major League Baseball players get to be in the Olympics, because it's going to happen right in the middle of the season and the league's going to have to take 2 weeks off to allow it to happen, if that does happen, I think that has more eyes from a baseball perspective than the World Baseball Classic does. I don't disagree with that statement because the Olympics just are bigger. Now, when you look at the way these two things break out, the WBC has 20 teams. The Olympics have 6. Less international grab, but the teams they're going to have is definitely going to have a lot of international grab, which is nice. The question, which said, if there's baseball in the Olympics in LA in 2028, baseball is going to be in the Olympics in 2028. Not a question. It's whether or not Major League Baseball players will get to be there. So Bryce repeating what he was asked and not specifying, because it was not specified when it was asked to him, I think is just as much on the question that was asked as it is on the answer that was given. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And, I think it all comes out of, I think both pieces were meant to be out of like a good place. I don't think it was meant to be this negative reaction that it got. At the end of the day, and Dr. Lieberger at Kent State will be excited that I get to talk on this because it's me using my degree for the first time in a long time. I think what people have to recognize about the Olympics is the reach of the Olympics to people who do not pay attention to baseball is going to be larger than the WBC. But again, soccer, football, wherever you're from, has the Olympics and it has the World Cup. And they both have their levels of importance for different reasons. The World Baseball Classic will bring in new fans, but the World Baseball Classic will solidify fandom across countries. It will make you feel the pride for your country and team, even just the ability to be there. I look at the baseball explosion that's starting to go and take over across, in my opinion, Australia. I think you're going to continue to see more really highly talented guys come out of it. Australia has a baseball league, right? This type of tournament for a country like Australia is so important. Now, the flip side here is that the Olympics gives us that ability to be on the stage with everybody. And I think that's where Bryce was really trying to go with this comment and make another statement, because unfortunately, I also think Bryce has been put out to dry about having to make all of the statements sometimes about the CBA. And all he was trying to do is what he's done this entire time leading up to CBA negotiations. Players want X, players need X, and it's important to us that we can do X. And the recognition to say MLB players should have the ability to be in the Olympics because of what it'll do for the sport is extremely important. I just think with the way the question was asked and the way he responded, I'm not sure that that was the message that got to everybody.
Yeah, and everything you say in any sort of situation can and will be used against you in negotiations when it comes to the CBA. And Harper knows that, and he wants to make sure that he's putting the right foot forward and making sure that it's known that the Olympics are just as important to him as the WBC is. And if that means putting it on a pedestal while speaking at the WBC for the sanctity and opportunity in the future, I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think it's a big no harm, no foul across the board, honestly. I think there's a lot of just misunderstanding of what was talked about and what was asked. At the end of the day, I think I leave us here, Flax, and this can be my final thought. I really think people need to start giving Bryce Harper a little bit of grace. We ask a lot out of the guy, and none of you realize it for some reason. He's the one who's not afraid to walk up to Manfred in a locker room and stand up for the rest of his cohort, and I think he deserves a little bit more respect for that. So, Bryce Harper, elite year, loading. That's where I'm at.
My final thoughts. Denison won 2 more games this weekend, outscored their opponents 17-1. Took a doubleheader on Sunday in and around some weather for the weekend. They are now 6-1 and ranked number 3 in the country. Tough weekend coming up in the Midwest against Adrian, good team from Michigan, Baldwin Wallace, good team from Ohio, and North Central College, good team from Illinois. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Love it. I love it. Well, guys, as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Make sure to share the podcast with your friends, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, really your favorite listening platform across the board. Don't forget to say what's up to us on socials, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Little shout out. Flax is the man on socials. When you're talking on socials, you're probably talking to him. Give the guy some love. He kicks ass for us over here on Baseball and Stitch. But at the end of the day, Flax, we end where we always end. Have a great